for more people to join Dr. Verholden before we begin?
So actually, it's like you said, Stephanie, it's 5:30. We want to be mindful of the time to start, only because that's the time we stated. So we'll be stick with that and be confident that people will join in. So.
All right, then. Let's take it away. William?
All right, so it is 5:30, as you had mentioned. I would call this meeting to order. It's February 18th, 2021. As a part of calling this meeting to order, I do see that we have a quorum. Let the record reflect that there is a quorum of the task force members. As a part of the call to order as well, I would like to state the disclaimer that the Flint Community Advisory Task Force is an advisory body to the mayor. It does not exercise any official duties on behalf of the city of Flint. We would like to encourage those that are part of the public to field questions during the meeting, which will be addressed later during the community open floor. At this time, I would, and also I'd like to remind you that the meeting is being recorded. And at this time, I would give the floor to our co-chair, Jeff Hawkins.
Thank you, William. And again, welcome to everyone, obviously to the task force, to our ex officios, and to the public, to the community. We are grateful to be here, to be able to have this platform that has been created for the community, by community. And it just excites us to not only have this platform, but to let you know that the platform is created for you. Of course, the whole objective is to have better relationships between community and law enforcement, and that includes everyone in public safety, so we can make the city of Flint a better place. We're grateful again for everybody who has participated, who has taken part, who has given their time to do this. And we are looking forward to just have an awesome dialogue so that we can create better relationships. So thank you again to everyone. At this time, I want to turn it over to Stephanie for a membership update.
All right. Effective February 5th, Mara Deshawn Booker voluntarily stepped down. At this time, we will be proceeding with one less member until another candidate is selected to fill the vacancy. We will give other members of the community the chance to donate their time to the task force. Subscribe to our Facebook channel or check out our websites for more updates regarding that item. Next, for this evening's meeting, we will be presenting 3 initial items the task force will be focusing on. The first is Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation, also known as TRHT, Implicit Bias Training, and lastly, Community Engagement Activities. After months of discussion, we have pinpointed these 3 items as important tools to engage the community in a meaningful way and begin necessary training regarding sensitive topics. Sherry Miller will be leading the TRHT introduction for this evening's meeting, so I will now open the floor to her.
Thank you, Stephanie. So just a little bit on what THRT is and how it will affect us in the community and the police, the law enforcement agency. And so TRHT, is the effects of racism are evident in social, economic, and government policies all around us and the places in which we live, learn, work, and play. People experience these effects when they take their children to school, when they apply for jobs, when they try to rent or buy a home, when they shop, when they interact with the police, and more. THRT is a comprehensive national and community-based process to plan for and bring about transformational and sustainable change and to address the historic and contemporary effect of racism. THRT, it seeks to unearth and jettison the deeply held and often unconscious beliefs created by racism. the main one being the belief in a hierarchy of human values. So it's designed the absurd belief, which has fueled racism and conscious and unconscious bias throughout the American culture, is the perception of inferiority or superiority based on race, physical characteristics, or place of origin. It is when we value one another based on skin color or other physical superficial characteristics, and let those values affect the decisions we make each day in areas like policy making and job decisions, in how we teach children. So to name a few. So those are things about THRT. So we're looking at changing the narrative. We're looking at racial healing, changing the narrative, what we see, what we hear about on the media or on, within our community. We're looking at changing that narrative. We're looking at racial healing and relationship building. So building relationships with local law enforcement is our ways to deal with that racial healing. We're looking at, no more separation and bringing us together. Laws, changing that policy and those procedures and how things are handled, and the overall economy, even bringing jobs or hiring people not based off of who you know, or based off of them being able to do that job, not because of the color of their skin. So TRHT in Flint is designed to address the critical need for racial healing in our community. The Community Foundation created the Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation Fund. It was funded by W.K. Kellogg Foundation, one of 14 national Kellogg TRHT place sites, and we are one of 4 sites here in Michigan. So moving forward, just be on the lookout. Already right now, the police is beginning to be trained on this TRHT. So police and public safety, that's underway. The task force here, this current task force, we're being trained. Myself, there's 2 other members, Ralph and Adrena, we're also being trained on truth and racial healing. And then be on the lookout as well for community and police, public safety. So within the community, there may be opportunities for you to become involved in that process on being trained in TRHT. So again, myself, Adrena, Ralph, we're all on the TRHT committee. We're a committee within a committee, so we're a subcommittee, but we're looking at being trained and educated on that as well. Any other questions about that, you can subscribe to our Facebook, check out our webpage at flinttaskforce.org for more information on that. And I will turn it over to, I believe, Deborah, or I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yes,
I think I'm up. And Sherry, thanks for sharing about TRHT. I know you haven't yet had the chance to participate in it, but it was great work undertaken by the Community Foundation of Greater Flint in partnership with the Kellogg Foundation. And I just want to make sure that people are clear. It's no small thing that Flint is a place site. There's only 14 across the country and 4 are in the state of Michigan. And having participated in it, it was a transformational experience. I walked into that with a lot, and I left out of that very strongly connected to the other people that I participated in that process with. And then all of the planning that came out of it was just amazing. So I can only imagine what will be possible as we open up the engagement opportunities for community to do that with the public safety officers that raise their hand to serve. So thank you, Sherry, and others on the committee for taking up the mantle to lead that work. One of our second initiatives will be around implicit bias training. And as somebody who's also participated in that and been certified in what's called IAT, Implicit Association Test, I want to give a little bit of a caveat and say that it's not the end all be all. And I want to be really clear, not all bias is implicit. Some bias is explicit. We're going to deal with that too. But what implicit bias training is, and I always describe it as, remember when we were just getting our driver's licenses and you were first learning how to drive, and they taught you about this thing called your blind spot. And your blind spot is that area just to the right or just to the left, right behind you. If you go to change lanes and you look in your mirror and you don't see that car in your blind spot, you could cause a major pileup out on the highway or out on the roadway. Well, implicit bias training is about helping people to uncover those blind spots. Because guess what happens? Just because you don't see it doesn't mean that you won't cause harm if you change lanes. And what did we learn in driver's training? How to see that blind spot. What they teach us to do? This. You got to look over your shoulder. So it's not just the testing, it's the training and the feedback that people get. It's that training around how to look over your shoulder and see things that might have been hidden from your view, but that are no less impactful based on the actions and decisions that you make. And so we're really excited about that. The reason we're sort of talking about all of our activities as a whole is because implicit bias training in and of itself won't carry the day. But if we put it in a larger context, we've got, a wonderful police chief who said, I'm here. I'm going to roll up my sleeves. I'm going to do the work. He's already been participating with a lot of the community groups. He's been doing some in-person and a whole lot of virtual engagement and interaction. When we add this thing, when we, operate from, there are things that people sometimes do, and we all have it. It's not a judgment. We all have implicit bias. And whether or not we know it, it impacts how we do our work. So getting that training, getting that look over the shoulder, just knowing that there are potentially things about how you do things that you don't know and are aware of that are impacting how you do your job. We're really excited to be partnering with the Flint Police Department and other public safety officers and sectors in this community to make sure that these people who raise their hand, most of whom are well-meaning and well-intentioned, have access to good resources to give them that training to look over their shoulder and the skills and the tools. And again, we want to avail that opportunity to people in our community to participate in that. So again, I just echo what Sherry said. If you want to be a part of that, if you're a community member who says, I'd love to be at the forefront of that, our goal is to create engagement opportunities for community, to build that bridge between public safety and community. So if you want to do that, I'm going to point you right back. Go to our website, flinttaskforce.org, shoot us an email. Our fabulous secretary is monitoring that email like a hawk, just waiting for people to send ideas and suggestions and all that great stuff. Don't text Pastor Hawkins. Don't text me. We have a whole committee of amazing people, sleeves rolled up to do the work. And the task force members who've taken up the mantle on that are Stephanie Ward, Sherry Miller, Adrena Niles, and Linda Samara. So we've got people here, they're doing the work. And I'm hoping that some of our ex officio members say, we're in the fight with you. And I know this is not new to any of us, but we do see it as a part of the process to engage community and better support building that bridge and giving skills and tools to our public safety sector. I'm now going to pass the ball over to our fabulous chair, Pastor Hawkins, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the proposed community engagement activities that I know came up at the last public meeting, and then we'll open up the floor to hear from people. And I'll be monitoring the Facebook, so I'm going to turn my video off so I can integrate some of those comments and also give some of our ex officio members a chance to chime in. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Furholden. And again, we want to make sure, and it's been echoed, that this is a platform that's simply created for community to be able to speak themselves. We're not in no shape, form, or fashion trying to speak for all, but the platform that's been created. So we really want community to take advantage of this, and to be able to not only come on, but use their voice. It's extremely important. These things that's been brought up, such as the fireside chats, block clubs, ride-alongs, mini stations, it's just opportunities that perhaps community can get engaged with law enforcement, and law enforcement get engaged with community to create a better understanding. And not only an understanding, but a better relationship. I think is extremely important. To kind of slide from that for 1 second, right before I got home today, a dear friend of mine called, and his son was pulled over by the police, didn't know why, guns was drawn, and afterwards they say, okay, you're free to go. No great explanation. Those
Uh-oh, I don't know what happened. We lost Pastor Hawkins, I think. Somebody, Linda, nod your head. You're on my screen. Did we lose Pastor Hawkins?
Yes, I don't hear him anymore.
Okay, great. Well, we're all on our toes thanks to COVID. Learn how to be nimble. So here's what I'd like to do until Pastor Hawkins is able to reconnect. It looks like he lost his connection. Just to add that these are the activities that people already have proposed. And I want to acknowledge Linda Samara and Stephanie Ward for taking up the mantle, get our website up. We do have a site that's up where you can report things that you need some assistance on, and you can email us if you have feedback. We're going to open up the floor. Tay, if you'll go to the next slide, to hear what would you like to see. So until Pastor Hawkins comes back, what I'd like to do is actually turn it over to some of our ex officio members. I can tell you there are many people watching this live on Facebook. I'm going to monitor that and lob some of those questions up in the chat. And I do encourage the people who are in the webinar, if you have specific questions, these task force members are here because they said, we want to be a part of this and we want to help do the work. So are there any of our ex officio members who have specific things, or any of the participants who are either inside of the webinar or viewing it live, who have ideas and suggestions about things that you'd like to see? We want to actually put that out in a public forum because we want to be transparent in our work. We're here in service of the community, and our goal is to pass the mic. So I'm gonna stop talking and pass the mic. Any of our ex officio members have any thoughts, ideas, or feedback, or activities that you have happening, or things that you see are important that you want to elevate in this conversation?
Dr. Furholt, I'm back on too, so just to let you know.
Okay, great. I pass the mic back to you then.
All right, thank you.
I'm gonna need you to get rid of that boost Wi-Fi.
I know, right?
That,
I'll take that. I'll take it. But again, we want to make sure that we're creating not only a healthy dialogue. One thing that we did talk about is a safe place, somewhere where people can come and let's have open discussion. Of course, we want to be, mindful and respectful, because we're looking to get things taken care of. We're looking for solutions, but we still have to have tough conversations as truth, how it looks, and how we felt, what we're experiencing.
Pastor Hawkins, Tammy Phillips here from the prosecutor's office. Can you finish your story that you were talking about your friend's son who got pulled over? You got cut off right as you were telling us what his experience was.
Yes, and thank you for that too. So he actually was coming from Burton. He got pulled over by Burton police and Flint police in downtown Flint. Again, when they pulled him over with guns drawn. This just happened today. And as they pulled him over with the guns drawn, they searched him. They did all this, and then they told him, yep, everything's good. You're free to go. They were left with not having the full explanation as to why. Now, and again, I don't want to be the one who who assumed to know every single detail, but it seemed like there was something missing as to why, because I would hate to believe that it was just because, they were driving while black. I'll be honest with you. So I think those are the type of things that we, need to look into, and for the community to be able to have a conversation about, and saying, yep, this is what happened. This is how I feel. No explanation. So at least we can have a healthy dialogue to address these issues, to put them in the hands of the right people. We have so many awesome ex officios that's on here, and to say, what can we do to deal with these issues that we know that everybody will be treated fair. So I did invite him on today, and hopefully that he'll get on and be able to talk about it a little bit more himself, because again, I don't want to be the one who's speaking for, but this is the platform that we created, and this is what people need to use this platform for. So thank you all.
So we do have a question in the chat. How are you going to include neighborhood groups? And some of the questions are really what's going to drive up some of the work. What I can say is I know for a fact that Chief Green is already, and many of his officers are already meeting with the neighborhood groups. If that's an issue that people would like to see addressed, we're very happy to elevate that issue and make sure that we have representation both from our task force and also from public safety. And I know we're talking about public safety broadly because a lot of these incidents where police are called or public safety is engaged involves multiple sectors of public safety. So I know that that's already afoot with Chief Green, but we will log that as a concern and a question so that the whole sector is aware that that's an interest of community.
Dr. Verholden, the prosecutor's office is really excited about getting involved with some of the community groups as well. We have had some past experience with some community prosecution, and we really want to get back to that because we recognize the value of being partners with our communities and being an avenue for information to communities who need to connect with the criminal justice system on the inside. So if there's any neighborhood group leaders out there who are interested in dialoguing with the prosecutor's office, I'm happy to share my contact information.
That would be great if you were willing to put something up in the chat.
I will do that.
Yep, and then read it out for the folks who can't see the chat because they're watching live. I think we got a fair number of people on Facebook Live watching this, and we will also memorialize this on YouTube because there'll be a lot of people who maybe couldn't make it in tonight, but that will be viewing this afterwards. So if you will put it up in the chat and then just speak it verbally, that way, no matter how people are watching, they can get it.
Sure, I'll speak it out right now and then I'll put it in the chat in just a second. My direct line is 810-424-4484. And my email is tphillips, PHILLIPS, @GeneseeCountyMI.gov. That's tphillips @GeneseeCountyMI.gov.
Great, thank you for that. And you also did share some resources that made it to my desk about effective strategies that are working in other places. Would you feel comfortable just saying a word about that? We actually plan to post that on our Facebook page and as a link on our website just to show people. Chief Green is very committed to evidence-informed practices. So would you be willing to share about what you had shared with us?
Sure, and our the other chiefs that are on the line might be familiar with this also. I am a member of the International Association of Chiefs of Police. They put out a monthly magazine. In their January magazine was, you can read that, Reforming the Police. And there were a couple of really great articles in there. I think the one that you might have been referring to is the fact that Canada has walked this path for years before us, and there's been some great research coming out of there since 2016 about getting communities getting them together, sharing information, getting away from this idea of enforcement to partnership, changing ideas about how police gather data and information to include communities instead of just arrest data. So there's just a lot of really dynamic stuff going on. I'm hoping to be able to attend the September conference of the International Association of Chiefs of Police, and would love to see if Chief Green could come along and maybe drag my boss, Mr. Layton, because I think it'll be an awesome opportunity to bring some of these things that are happening elsewhere that were probably shamefully so for me, some of them very eye-opening. The things that I read in this article in the magazine made me stop and think a little bit from both sides, and frankly, how to bridge that gap between the really good police officers that we have out there who kind of feel a little bit like, hey, everybody's blaming me and I haven't done anything bad, to the community who's saying, well, we don't think that everybody's bad, but we want somebody to listen to us and share our experience. So it's just really great to see that kind of stuff going on all over the country with law enforcement, that their eyes and ears, our eyes and ears are open, and we're ready to receive that information.
That's great. And I'll just call out a comment. I won't use names because I don't have people's permissions to use their names. But there's a comment that says, during the mini stations era, when community policing was active, crimes were low, neighborhoods were engaged, and the community appeared more lively. And so again, I think the push towards more evidence-based practices that are more community engaged, with an emphasis on the serve and less on the protect, which often can, breed aggression and other things, I think is important. And that's absolutely work that we're willing to undertake. So we'll give a nudge to Chief Green for that, that conference. And thank you for putting your information up.
Sure.
Any of our other, and so keep them coming, folks. If you have questions, you can post them in the chat. You can post them in the Q&A. I am monitoring the live feed also for questions. Are there other opportunities that any of our other members want to share or elevate on people's radars? I'll just point to one comment from someone who I won't use names so I don't have people's permissions, but the Flint Neighborhoods United meeting, that's a very strong community group. One of many in our city, has their meeting the first Saturday of the month. So if people are interested in getting more engaged in those community efforts, you can go to www.flintneighborhoodsunited.org. flintneighborhoodsunited.org. Okay, great. Any other insights, updates from some of our other ex officio members? I'm specifically looking at Afton Shavers, who is the project. I know I hate to do it to you, Afton, but we invited and have the people that we have here for a reason, because public safety touches many sectors. And I'll tell you real quick, my son last year dropped a friend off in Flushing, and he was driving down Saginaw at midnight, and he was in Mount Morris Township, and the cops pulled up behind him and put the lights on, and he did not pull over. And when I asked him why he didn't pull over, he said because he was scared out of his mind. It was the first time he'd ever been pulled over by the police. And we found out when we went to court that he stopped right at the line. The officer followed him for 5 minutes, and he stopped right at the line where he was going to be in a pursuit. And they had gotten permission to pursue him once he crossed that line. I think it was at Carpenter Road. And he would have been in a pursuit, and then the Flint Police Department would have been involved. It was one of the most amazing police officers. He showed up to court. He said, God, he was so scared. I don't understand why. And I'm like, he probably doesn't understand the experience of being a 19-year-old Black boy being pulled over by the police for the first time, seeing and experiencing all that you see and experience in the world. And my son was traumatized out of that experience. He was. And I thought we'd gone through it all. My dad was a cop. We'd had lots of conversations about, what to do. But in that moment, he didn't have it, and he had some stress that came out of that. So I'd love it, Afton, if you would just share a little bit about the Recast project that we explicitly invited and what you all are doing that's also adding to supporting recovery from stress and trauma in our community.
So like far too many folks that look like me, I also have had some very scary interactions with law enforcement. And it's a situation where I continue to say that when you've had an encounter, it's a type of stress that doesn't go away, because every time I am driving and there is a law enforcement professional behind me, I naturally have a response to it. I have a natural chemical reaction response to this vehicle being behind me, whether I'm doing something I'm not supposed to be doing or not. It's a trigger. And so Recast is resiliency in communities after stress and trauma. And one of the main tenets of the project is to sort of help both community and the first responders develop ways to manage those triggers. And so some of the work that we're doing is with the Genesee Health Plan and providing different types of stress management training for our law enforcement, first responders, the firefighters, and hopefully, you know, across some other brands of service in the community. But then additionally, we're looking at things to support stress and recovery for parents. One of the projects we just launched at the end of last month is called Coffee and Conversation. And it's an opportunity for parents, specifically Flint parents, but for parents to be able to come and support one another in a safe space. And so we're talking in that conjunction about what life looks like right now, because we are a community that is under a level of consistent stress and trauma. You know, we have the water crisis. Oh, guess what? We also have COVID. And so we have families that parents are now, you know, trying to manage two crises at the same time, plus work, plus teach 3rd, 7th, and 10th grade. And so that's a very stressful experience for the average person, let alone anyone dealing with a pandemic and a water crisis. So we're really looking for ways that we can support Flint parents in those endeavors. And then outside of that, we're doing some additional projects with funding some mini grants to support youth-related activities in the community. Outside of that, we're going to be doing some additional trainings that we hope to host in the spring. So we'll be looking at doing some things around implicit bias as well. We'll be looking at some things in terms of connecting families to supports for experience with adverse childhood experiences, or as we call it, ACEs. What we've learned from our science is that children who've been exposed to adverse childhood experiences tend to have issues later in life. Specifically, they have worse health outcomes. And so we want to mitigate some of those concerns for kids at an earlier age. And hopefully we can sort of start to make some change in the recovery of our community overall. So we're looking at program implementation. We're also looking at systematic change. We're looking at connections with law enforcement. And absolutely with a project like this in this community, we're looking at the impacts of racism, because race-based trauma is sufficient. And most of us who happen to be Black or brown have had some level of race-based trauma, and we don't actually know how to even identify it, because unfortunately it is so normalized in our community that until someone tells us that there's something wrong with that, we don't think that there is something wrong with that, and we're internalizing those things that happen to us, which is a part of that truth and racial healing portion that was mentioned earlier. So that's where we are. That's what we're doing. We'll be here and a part of this task force to help support in any way that we can, and develop any tools or community resources that we need to along the way. And I'm always open for dialogue or suggestions. You can send me an email at recast, RECAST, @flint.org, and I will put that in the chat as well.
Okay, great. And when these mini grant opportunities roll around again, if there are community-based or grassroots organizations that want to join the fight, how can they find out more? Because I know, because y'all got me involved, that we have just submitted our continuation for that. And it is a great opportunity for people who are in the community and doing the work to be the recipient of some of those funds to help support the work that they're doing to further recovery from stress and trauma in this community.
Absolutely. The cool thing about the Recast project is that literally we're funded to support the community. And so that means that we try to put as many of the dollars back into the community as we can. And one of the ways that we do that is through the mini grant program. We also do some additional program funding outside of those mini grants. And so we'll be looking to connect with some other partners and some other organizations. We've done a few things so far with a couple different groups, like the CRIM has done a really cool mindfulness project with us with the firefighters. And so we'll be expanding that. And we're going to be doing some work with the Public Health Youth Academy coming up in the summer. And so we're looking for additional ways that we can support. So I absolutely will take that recommendation about attending the Flint Neighborhoods United meeting, because we certainly want to make sure that, you know, we can get access to neighborhood groups that probably could use some support as well, and figure out some ways that we can uplift those entities as well.
Great. Thank you, Afton.
You're welcome.
Okay. We have a question from Facebook. And the question is the Sheriff's Department and its deputies involved in the work with the task force or a member of the ex officio members? And so I'm going to actually see if I can throw the ball to my colleague, Ralph Ariano, because, you know, we needed I know he's laughing right now, but we needed a group that we could congeal and really figure out a path forward. And we're not here to replace anything. We're here to just help be a broker and a bridge and strengthen community engagement with our public safety sector. So we do have on the ex officio board an organization called ALPACT. And I'm looking to see if the ALPACT representative is here, but if not, one of our members is also a member of ALPACT. Ralph, could you just say a few words about ALPACT?
Yes. LPAC was formed a while back while I was working with the Hispanic Technology Center, and they invited us to go work with them. And it's a group that was put together with it was the Civil Rights Department of Michigan, along with a couple other state police and a couple others. And they had members on the group, and they meet once a month, you know, to get information from the community, and also to let them know what everyone is doing. Our concern at the time during the water crisis was we were having a lot of problems with the immigration authorities. They were there, but they also had, like I say, state police and chiefs from all across the county. And if we had questions about certain issues, they could, we had the resources right there, you know, from Civil Rights Department, from state police, from police chiefs and other law enforcement. I think even like University of Michigan police were there, and the Mott police were there. So it was a good way for us to have a conversation about the sorts of work that they did and how they went about issues. And for us with the immigration issues, we had that conflict about whether or not the state police and all the other police were stopping people to help immigration authorities, which they weren't. And so that was good for us to understand that, because it was a major concern for several months while ICE was here. I don't know if you need any more, but I thought it was an excellent connection with the you know, with the law enforcement, and as a result of that connection, What's that light up day that the state police does? We had to get the state police do a parade and hand out light bulbs all around the neighborhood, and then it came over to the center, and we had a big picnic on the empty lot next door. They had hot dogs and other treats for, and they had a band playing. It was it's a nice effort by the state police to connect with the community.
All right, great. Thank you, Ralph, and I appreciate our panelists. Again, if it's okay to use your name, you can say you can use my name, but somebody has put up the link for ALPACT, which is the Advocates and Leaders for Police and Community Trust. The website is flintneighborhoodsunited.org/ALPACT, ALPACT -meeting/. So if you just go to the flintneighborhoodsunited.org site, you will see the site, and I think it's great work. It says they meet Friday, 10 a.m. North Bank Center in the Park Place room. The focus, this was their January meeting, but I think it's good insight to understand who ALPACT is, which includes many of these public safety officers as well. The focus is on building resilient communities. They say our communities face many threats, from active shooters to gang activity to violent extremists to online predators. While law enforcement has an important role to play, protecting communities from threats requires community involvement and community solutions other than traditional arrest and prosecution. And at this meeting, Barbara McQuaid, U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District, led the discussion. So please check out Flint Neighborhood United, Flint Neighborhoods with an S, united.org/ALPAC-meeting for more information on that. And thank you, Ralph, for sharing about that. And thank you to our participant for putting that information up in the chat. You can only send it to the panelists. You guys can use the Q&A feature. And I just went ahead and threw it out so all of the attendees could see it. And I spoke it out loud for people who can't see it. All right, great.
So now we are officially in the Q&A portion and open discussion. Before we jump into that, we just want to thank you all for being present, engaging with us, and showing up to do sometimes difficult and challenging, but critical and necessary work with us. For anyone that is tuning in now or may have come in a little later, I just want to remind you all that you can drop in a question in the comment section. For those tuning in on Facebook, please feel free to do the same. And also, if you do have a question or concern that comes up after we wrap our meeting, we want to encourage folks to email us at info@flinttaskforce.org, and I will drop that on Facebook and in the comment section here. But we just want to open the floor to you all. And also open it up to any of our ex officio members who may have anything to share.
Linda, I do want to say there's a question that's on Facebook, and it's a two-part. If you can see that.
Yeah, let me hop on.
I can read it for you if you need me to, because it was actually the situation that I was alluding to.
Okay.
And so the question was asked, the gentleman's son got pulled over in Flint downtown by Flint and Burton police. After they draw the guns on them, checked everything out, they told them it was a misunderstanding and they can go. When they asked what was the misunderstanding, they just stated that there was a robbery and there was some guns. Now again, I don't want to suggest that didn't happen, but of course it's something that we unfortunately have seen far too many times. So one of the question was, how can he find out who that Burton, who the Burton City Police was that put him over, or at least get a full understanding as to why they were suspect, or why did they go through that with this son? I believe we can probably turn it over to an ex officio. I don't think we have a burden rep online, but if, you know, just this is the type of things that we need to at least be able to have some dialogue to see why would this happen, or what is the best possible way that he can go about trying to find out what happened.
This Chief Green, I can answer that question if you like.
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, I overheard that radio traffic when that call went out. It was an incident that occurred in Burton. They put out a vehicle description, and evidently several vehicles in Burton, including City of Flint police officers, pulled this vehicle over. Believe it was involved in some type of robbery at that time. And evidently, I'm assuming that this was the wrong vehicle involved. So they should have given them a proper explanation on why they were traffic stopped, because this was reported over the radio. As I stated, I overheard that radio traffic.
Thank you, Chief, for that. And so there is no follow-up just yet, but as you stated, you know, just to have a healthy dialogue. I do understand that, you know, those things happen where, you know, there's a car that looks like a car. I get that. But what could be the healthy way, or at least the right way, to assure them that they was not just targeted, they wasn't profiled for the most part. But I think the conversation after the fact is important. So what would you suggest?
Well, I suggest they should be provided a little bit more explanation, because a little bit more to that call. The actual person that was reporting the robbery was allegedly following the vehicle that was involved. So it definitely wasn't this specific vehicle was targeted, but the 911 caller could have had identified the wrong vehicle. And that could have been easily explained out during the traffic stop. And I'm not speaking for the officers that were involved in the stop. I don't know what information they passed on, but that would have been proper to do that.
Okay. Thank you for that, Chief, and for the explanation. And of course, if you have any other concerns, I'm sure he'll put them down. Thank you, Linda. I'll turn it back over to you too.
Pastor, it's Tammy
Yes, ma'am.
Phillips from the prosecutor's office again. You know, I teach at the police academy, the Mott Regional Police Academy, and Chief Odette and his predecessor, Chief Locke, and the staff that they have there have done a great job at kind of re-examining different things that we can do in all of the phases of a cadet's academy. And one of the things that we have done is, during the appropriate sections of the training academy, brought someone in who has had a particular experience. So for example, I started bringing in a survivor of domestic violence to talk with the cadets about the importance of how they interact with their domestic violence victims at the scene, to have a successful encounter and do some successful information gathering. I'm wondering if maybe you're willing to connect your family friend who had this experience, or any other young person who's had this experience, that maybe we might be able to work in a little session with the cadets to help them understand. When I talked with the cadets after the fact about whether they thought it was valuable to talk with my domestic violence survivor, and whether that gave them a different understanding or caused them to think a little bit differently about things, they were all really positive about that. So maybe that's just a way that we can move the narrative forward, that we can try something different, and getting information like that to our cadets early on in their police careers. I'd love to be part of doing something like that if we can.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Tammy. I think that's awesome. I think it's needed.
I do
Again,
too.
because,
That's a great
just-
idea. I really love that.
Yeah, so absolutely. Thank you for that. And I'll make sure I connect them with you too.
Alrighty, I'll make sure I get you my cell phone number.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn it back over to Linda.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that the individual who commented about what had happened is requesting to be connected to Chief Green through you, Pastor Hawkins. So I just wanted to add that. Other than that, I'm not seeing any other questions currently, and want to encourage folks to ask if they have any. But also, if anyone else has anything to share, it doesn't necessarily have to be a question. Just any ideas you may have, things you'd like to see from us. The floor is yours.
Hi, Linda. This is Mike. I just wanted to comment that maybe in a forum like this and streaming live on Facebook, it's an opportunity to introduce us to some others within Chief Green's chain of command. Obviously, he's a very visible figure, and we know who the chief is, and there are resources available to him that are going to assist some of our community members with some of the issues we're hearing about downstream from his chair, and maybe get to know some of those folks a little better as well.
That's a really great idea.
I'd love to hear from Chief Green and see if he's amenable to that. Maybe having some other folks here, because as folks talk about mini stations, in the midst of a pandemic, maybe it looks virtual right now, but is that something that's possible, Chief Green?
Yes, I think that's an excellent idea, and I can make that happen.
That's why you're our chief, man. And thank you for coming on. We know you have a heavy lift on your shoulder. So really, Chief Green, thank you for coming on and being willing to, provide this opportunity, another opportunity. I know you provide many opportunities, but for this opportunity for interaction with community and all of these committed individuals. I don't want to really call people out, but I would really like to call on my colleague, Dan Russell, to see if he would be willing to say anything about the psychological first aid training that's happening in the community, because I just think it's so critically important.
Deborah, sure, thank you. We offer a number of trainings. One is psychological first aid. Another one that might be a little better known is called mental health first aid. And mental health first aid is an evidence-based practice, and it kind of is what it sounds like. It is first aid like you would take for physical health, but it is geared towards dealing with individuals that are experiencing a mental health crisis or issue. Most people, regardless of what they do, are not trained or don't, know what to do when they come across that. And it's just very basic, common sense kinds of things to do to deal with mental illness and other behavioral health issues, and just to better understand how that goes and the things people go through. We can do groups. We come out and we just, everything, of course, now is virtual. But all we need is a call and enough to set up a group. We provide all of the learning materials. There's a book that goes with it, and we provide all that, and more the merrier. So we are always happy to do either the mental health first aid, psychological first aid, and do any kind of speaking also. We just need, they like to have, I think, at least 10 to do it. Other than that, we're pretty flexible with time. Mental health first aid is, I believe, a full day session. So if you would like that, we can certainly provide more information on what we have, and be happy to do whatever we can.
No, it's great. And thank you so much for sharing a bit, because I was on a different panel, a national thing, and there was a physician on, and he said something that really struck me. He said, we have this big push in our country to train people on CPR, which is what you would use if somebody was having a cardiac event. And he said, the likelihood that you would encounter somebody having a cardiac event where you would have the opportunity to administer CPR outside of a healthcare setting, and that person actually survived that event, he said it was less than 1%. But he then went on to say the likelihood that you would encounter somebody out in the community who was in need of mental health first aid is 1 in 10.
Yeah.
1 in 10 people. And what you might consider as somebody who is like over your eyeballs in mental health and behavioral health, as something that seems common sense, a lot of us don't have those skills and training. So the fact that you all are really doing the work to scale up and scale out this mental health training, and that you're willing to hold trainings for groups of 10 or more, I think could be transformative for this community. Because just based on that stat, 10% of the community could benefit from having people who have those skills on board when they encounter people. So, you know, for you, it's everyday work, but for many of us, it would be a real opportunity. So just thank you for your work.
And that's great. I put my contact information in the chat. So thank you for bringing that up, Deborah.
Amazing.
And I think that's a great story that the physician told. And I think that's a very real example of that. And I think, you know, particularly in this environment with COVID, that 1 in 10 is probably much more frequent than that. I know going out to Myers or Home Depot these days, you almost always encounter something like that where those skills come in handy. So, so thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, well, we're gonna start on time and end on time. And I do encourage people who are inside of the webinar and people who are also not in the webinar but viewing it live, do share it. This is a task force. We are up to a particular task right now to elevate a conversation and build that bridge. So I really appreciate all of the members who came on and shared the resources that they have. I hope that people find value in it. Please do reach out. Our next meeting, our next public meeting will be Thursday. It's always the third Thursday of the month. So it'll be Thursday, March 18th, 2021 from 5:30 to 6:30. You can register in advance and be inside of the webinar, or you can view it live on our Facebook page, and it will be memorialized on YouTube. Our website again is www.flinttaskforce.org. The email is info@flinttaskforce.org. And our Facebook page, you go on to Facebook, you can put in Flint Community Advisory Task Force on Public Safety, or there's an acronym that I can't figure out the best way to say it. FCA TOPS. FCA TOPS is what I'm coming up with right now. And then after you register, you will get a confirmation email. And by all means, again, we have good reporting mechanisms in place, and we're going to populate our website with resources and our Facebook page for people. So you'll start to see things around this mental health first aid training. You'll start to see meeting announcements for Flint Neighborhoods United. We are not trying to supplant or replace anything that already exists. We're a task force. We have a task at hand. We're going to figure out the time of this task force, but our goal is to help elevate the conversation, make sure the mic is all the way in the hands of community, and that we have what we need so that all of our citizens, including our public safety officers, have what they need, and it's a community that works. So email us if you have information or feedback. If you've exhausted the channels, you haven't gotten a resolve to an issue, Chief Green is here. He's demonstrated, he's here. He's our partner in the work. We've got plenty of others from the public safety sector who take up that same mantle, and plenty from other community groups with that same core value and commitment. I'm going to turn it over and give the last word to our chair, Pastor Hawkins.
Again, thank you, Dr. Verhoeven, and all of you task force ex officios, and certainly to the public. And this is certainly a needed dialogue. It'll be a continuous dialogue. And we know that and believe that there will be great relationships that will come out of this. Of course, there's always tough conversations, but tough conversations is needed to better understand and better unite. So thank you again. I'll turn it back over in the hands of William.
All right, let the record reflect that it's 6:30 right now. I'm going to move that this meeting is adjourned. And I just need a second.
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 All right, and from the task force, the ayes?
Aye.
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 Ayes. All right. Being that there is no more further business, this meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.